And now, the best 60-ish seconds of your week. So it turns out that the $3.5 trillion, a number staggering in and of its own right, spending package that the Biden administration wants to foist upon the American people turns out to be more like $5 to $5.5 trillion, according to some independent studies, not necessarily of a conservative mind. So think about it. This ultimately boils down to more government control, and with it, more taxation. It's impossible to escape that fact. No matter what the rhetoric on the progressive left says, it's going to hit the average taxpayer really, really hard, not only in the short term, but for many, many years to come. The payoff for all of this profligate spending goes for a generation. And Joe Biden now tells us, well, it's really about everybody paying their fair share. Think about that and ask President Biden and his administration what they truly believe the fair share is, because that's at the heart of this. You know, we need to come back at the progressive left when they use these empty phrases that sound so nice but are devoid of meaning, and ask them what they truly mean when they use these flowery words. Representative Jim Clyburn, the man who probably single-handedly got Joe Biden elected as president, was asked that question not long ago. What is the fair share that you keep talking about? He stumbled and stammered and finally said, well, it's not up to me to decide, it's up to the experts. Once again, who are these unnamed bureaucratic experts that would tell us how much we should have to pay in taxes? Not too many of my neighbors are telling me that their lives would be a little bit better if only their taxes were higher. On the contrary, most American families believe that if they're allowed to keep more of their hard-earned dollars and decide for themselves how that money is spent, rather than shipping it off to Washington or to Harrisburg to some faceless, nameless bureaucrats to spend, that they'd be better off for it, and that ultimately all of us would be. That's something that really is important to think about as we talk about every budget. Whether government should have a confiscatory hand in taking more and more of individuals' hard-earned money and redistributing it for programs they think are swell, or whether individual taxpayers and families should be able to keep more of what they earn. And the crisis on the southern border continues to get worse. As hard to imagine as that really is, this week with more bad news on more fronts than we can possibly cover in the best 60-ish seconds of your week. But suffice it to say, we've got a real serious problem there. Kamala Harris now saying that there needs to be an investigation into the policies and tactics of this administration. I don't think she mentions that it's the Biden-Harris administration that she wants investigated, but I think an investigation might be a really good idea, because then we'd see how truly devoid of any reasonable thought, logic, and seriousness there has been paid to the southern border. Need to get back to a nation with legitimate borders. Illegal immigration hurts our country. Legal immigration helps it. This administration simply doesn't seem to get it. All they thought they needed to do was reverse all of the policies of President Trump, and somehow things would get better. You knew it wasn't going to, but they thought it would. The proof now is that they have disaster on their own hands, and they've got disasters back here at home, because Biden can't even seem to get his own Democrat Party to fly in formation in Congress. And so this week we saw yet more examples of infighting among the Democrats, most notably on the funding for the Iron Dome, the protective shield that Israel enjoys against rocket attacks from Hamas, which in a single month, May, when the bombing was really at its height, intercepted about 90% of the incoming missiles. The leftist Democrats, AOC, Tlaib, and others, Omar, that gang, all wanted it stripped out of an emergency funding bill. And so the Democrat leadership did that. Then they realized what a disaster they had on their hands, both policy-wise and politically. And they came back later in the week with a single form bill to fund the Iron Dome. It passed with only a handful of votes against it, but the rhetoric of the far left exposes not only their anti-Semitism, but their complete lack of understanding of world politics. Calling Israel an apartheid state and other things really so far misses the mark that the Democrats in Congress were railing against them. The Republicans didn't have to say too very much on that one. And back here in Pennsylvania, the state legislature began this week to take a very hard look at $104 million in unpaid tolls. Think about that. That's about 11 million rides, and we're told about 50% of the non-Easy Pass riders going for free. Of course, that ultimately costs those who are paying the freight additional money. And there comes to be a lot of questions about both transparency and simple efficiencies and good public policy. Got to get to the bottom of that one. It'll be very interesting to see where those paths lead. And fall is upon us. It came this week. Summer left to my great chagrin, but now we have the cool days, the beautiful leaves, football season, and some really great days ahead. And for now, that is the best 60-ish seconds of your week.